Hello and welcome to Driving Healthy Media Effectiveness with Holland and Barrett, a Marketing Beat and Kantar webinar in association with Holland and Barrett. My name's Morag Cuddiford-Jones. I'm a business and marketing journalist and editor, and I'm your moderator this morning. Today, we're joined by Sparsh Pandya, Senior Client Director, Media and Insights Division at Kantar, and Philip Nellenbach, who leads Insight, Analytics, and the Customer and Employee Experience team at Holland and Barrett. So the agenda, you can see this is what we're going to be covering today. Challenges, the need for adaptive insights, those delivered insights, and what it means for the future. Now, just before we start, let me tell you how you can interact with us today. Although you're in listen-only mode, we're really keen to hear any questions or comments you have throughout the session. Please use the questions pane that you can see on the right of your screen, or on the left, to submit these to us at any time. We're also recording the webinar, so you'll be sent a copy to watch on demand in the next 24 hours. So, the addressable advertising marketplace, the potential is huge. You can tailor your ads to audiences in meaningful ways based on preferences, behavior, history, and more. And it sounds simple, and it could be, only you don't need me to tell you the world is getting more complicated. The endless will they, won't they over cookie deprecation seems to be over, with Google staying the executioner's hand for the time being, but there are still plenty of complications. Apple's iOS 14 change regarding app tracking, and the simple matter of the customer being offline, real physical shopping. Who knew? Today, we're going to reveal an evolution in campaign measurement that could help cut through some of that complication. So first, I'm going to turn to the views of measurement specialists and brands. Philip from Holland & Barrett, let's kick off with you, if we may. And what's your view on this from the brand owner's perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Maura. Yeah, I think there's a few things. Really, one is that consumer engagement is evolving, right? Media has significantly evolved, and brands must now build campaigns that meet consumers where they are and how they want to receive content. This requires us to really understand how different platforms work, different channels work. But it also, to do that, it requires us to invest in the right talent and capabilities to execute. I think there's a real fragmentation of channels. We advertise to build relationships with consumers, including winning with them and winning where they choose to spend their hard-earned cash. And that's harder with a fragmented media landscape. And it's not just about how social media is evolving, it's more broadly, as we see retail media networks growing, streaming, VOD growing. There's a lot of evolving video formats growing around long form, short form, influencers. And these are all essential parts of omni-channel campaigns. And I think on top of that, of course, as Morgan just mentioned, there's also changes around data privacy and compliance, right? As regulation continues to evolve, brands need to carefully balance how they approach that to deliver real customer trust, and the ability to really, that changes our our approaches on how we measure and optimize campaigns in real time without compromising on customer trust and data privacy. So that's really one of the key things I think brands need to be mindful of as we continue to try in our efforts to deliver effective campaigns. Sparsh, do you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. So from a measurement kind of agency perspective, a number of the challenges that you just mentioned, Philip, are what we respond to, and kind of we look to build solutions to help answer those changing or shifting nature of that media landscape. So you mentioned fragmentation, for example. There's a longer and longer tail of media touch points, right? And there's an ever-growing need to uncover or find insight of how those touch points are delivering, because every penny counts in the media plan. So that's a challenge we face: coverage across as many media touch points or channels as possible. But equally, there's a gold standard out there for this, what type of measurement is best. And that gold standard is as close as you can get to passively measuring consumers, not priming or asking consumers to rely on their own memory to understand what their interaction with different media channels is, but rather be a fly on the wall, as it were, during their daily media consumption habits to be able to understand what they're doing organically. And it's really these challenges that we look to answer here at Kantar, and this is the underpinning of our research methodology that we deployed in partnership with you, called Lift Plus, and that's what we'll discuss in a little bit more detail a little bit later on. But certainly in terms of broader landscape trends, we see the need for passive measurement in combatance with the idea of GDPR and ever-growing privacy concerns, as you mentioned also. So to find a way that we can actually uncover those areas of the media plan without intruding on people's lives is the challenge that we face, and in light of that is the solution that we've developed.
Without intruding on people's lives, that's always going to be an interesting one, isn't it? To what degree there is intrusion. But first of all, so Philip, let's come back to you. Can you talk us through the key business questions and the insight requirement for the campaign that Kantar has measured for you?
Yeah, certainly. So, one of the, we measure campaigns, right? As I'm sure everybody does. And we have multiple tools, behavioral models. We use ad hoc research, tracking methods and approaches. And I think when we were coming at it from this campaign, we've been investing a lot more over recent years and more campaigns and more targeted campaigns. And what we really wanted to have was a solution that would provide faster and more agile insights. So this was kind of quick insights into performance. And traditionally, we would have used across media to understand a kind of pan multi-channel campaign. But we also wanted to understand the impact on consumers and what they thought, but also their behavior. So we've typically been limited to claim behavior, and we really wanted to drive to actual behavior. And then we also wanted to understand that full exposure, right? So again, how many people were exposed really? And understanding the journey from awareness of the campaign, the engagement that they had, how it changed their perceptions, how each different element of the campaign changes perceptions. And ultimately, as I said, looking back to see, what behavior that drove. I think the third piece for us was really, we wanted to try to push the boundaries on combining traditional and digital channels and taking advantage of newer channels out there and being able to understand how they individually look and contribute, but also how they work together to change those perceptions. So we really needed something that gave us a bit more real-time insight and a holistic view of how the campaign worked. And that's really what our objectives were, to try to measure this campaign and understand the performance, which is what led us to the solution that we piloted with Kantar.
So this sounds to me like it's almost alchemy to an outsider. I'm a business journalist. I'm not an expert in any of this anyway. So we've got real time. We've got customers' actual behavior rather than claimed behavior. So, but then again, we're doing it in a privacy first way. We're not literally stalking these people as they make their way around the world. So Sparsh, can you tell me, can we move away from the alchemy and the magic and tell us exactly how Live Plus does actually work and how you could meet this business challenge?
Absolutely, yeah. A little bit of a behind the curtain, I think, because it isn't magic. It's very much rooted in tech, really speaking, and it's advanced tech, really. So we built a mobile panel. Everything centers around that app that sits in panelists' phones, and it's very intuitive, and it has the power to record any type of media experience within the audio-visual sense and in the outdoor sense as well. So through that app, we are essentially tracking 24/7 the movements and the exposures of any given panelist. It's all consented, I should stress, and incentivized as well. And we retain those highest quality parameters for any Kantar panel in the makeup of this panel, both in terms of representation, but also in terms of quality and kind of upkeep of that panel. But in essence, what this software allows us to do is to be tracking real-time location of these panelists. So that's a really revolutionary kind of step forward within outdoor tracking. Till now, the most granular we could get from a measurement standpoint is asking questions around daily travel habits and visitations to certain areas. But now within a distance that we can calibrate right down to 1 meter away to 100 meters away or even more, we can understand proximity to different outdoor locations. And these are not only billboard, these are also actual physical locations. And then the AV side of things, we do with audio matching or audio content recognition. So this is kind of like how the app Shazam works when you're trying to understand what song you're listening to. The software is listening out for a specific trigger from the campaign, and that is it can be within sort of 5 seconds, but actually we can actually calibrate that even down to around 2 or 3 seconds. So it only needs to hear a short snippet from the campaign, and it knows that that panelist has been exposed to the campaign. Those two methods are really the backbone of this solution to allow for that passive tracking. And then as soon as we understand that an exposure has been had, through push notification, the panelist is sent a survey. But they're really short surveys. They're to the point. They're a streamlined set of metrics. So we actually refer to them more as conversations. They're in a little bit more informal, everyday language rather than formal survey language to really capture real reactions. And those track both brand equity measures as well as creative diagnostic measures. And then there's added flavor we can bring. Because this is an app experience, because this is mobile enabled, we can also capture flavors of qualitative insights through things like consumer videos. Panelists can record a selfie video of themselves, giving their feedback to what they think of the campaign. And that really helps to add a level of depth and sort of gravitas to the numbers and the data that we're seeing, because you can actually put a face behind some of the insights as well. And as I mentioned, the panel is fully representative, nationally representative for the UK. And this really helps us have as much reach into both the broader campaigns and campaign niches as well, to report out on things like segmented audiences and those kind of things. Very quickly, in terms of the insights it delivers, and you'll see some of these in the Holland and Barrett case a little bit later on. But as I mentioned, brand lift measurement against brand equity measures across the funnel from awareness down to consideration. Reach and frequency analysis to understand what the real footprint of the campaigns are. And this, we refer to it as sort of validated quality reach. Philip mentioned earlier about how many people are we actually reaching. This passive method enables us to kind of, that model to be a lot more accurate than any kind of assumptions made based on data or claim behavior, as we mentioned earlier. Creative quality, retail insights, which I'm sure a lot of people on the call will be interested in. For any kind of physical location holding brand, this is a new layer of insights that were never before possible. And of course, linking everything back to ROI and cost efficiency, really in-depth cost efficiency analysis around how much investment it required to achieve any given outcome as well.
Fantastic. So we're going to delve into the results in a second, but I just want to remind the audience, please do send us your questions. There's a lot of information coming at you. I appreciate it. And again, you can watch this on demand and catch up on it. But please, we'd love to hear your questions. If there's something that isn't clear to you or you'd like a term explained, ping it in the questions pane and we will get that back to you and get it read out. So results. So a tour of the insights that were delivered. Take us on the tour, Spart.
Yes, or maybe we should say browsed for the retail audience. It's just a browse of the insights, a bit of window shopping, as it were. And this is this is real data from a real campaign. So this will give you a flavour of the kind of insights we were able to uncover. First and foremost, profiling, right? So because of we are reliant on a passive method, we can understand actually who did we really hit, and this can serve as an auditing tool. Targeting versus plan, how effective that targeting was, and so this is on the broadest level of sort of that gender split and the age breakdown of who our audience hit. But this can be calibrated to other different demographics as well. So really shining a light on how effective what we sought out to do ended up being in terms of who we reached. Speaking of reach, we do have total levels of reach and those kind of things available, but really the most valuable are these kind of reach overlap data points and understanding incremental reach of individual channels as well. These can be really helpful in pinpointing successful areas of the media plan and perhaps those that require more efficiency as well. And then we get into the brand equity. So Philip mentioned, the strong need to understand how these campaigns are making consumers feel, and also how their endorsement levels of certain brand metrics has been impacted. So here's just a tour of some of them. Brand affinity, really important sort of long-term brand loyalty measure. You can see that in the Holland and Barrett case. We got some strong lifts. both among overall sort of 18+ audiences, but particularly skewing to those above 45-year-old females. And then on the right, you can see we can then break those down to channel attributions. And we can see here that long-term loyalty really powered through by that TV spend in this case, as well as supported by those digital channels. If we move over to brand imagery, Holland and Barrett being a brand for someone like me, really important sort of differentiating image factor, again, driven strongly by the campaign. But interestingly, in this case, we see that it's the digital channels that drove that more, with Meta and YouTube in particular. And this sits right in line with some broader sort of thought leadership that we have uncovered here at Kantar. Last year, we released a piece of work that looked at our entire brand tracking database and understood that difference is driven by digital predominantly. Of course, offline still has a role to play, but the share of digital can't be overlooked. And why difference is really important is that this fits within our meaningfully different framework of understanding brand power. So we have a validated understanding that the pillars of driving brand equity sit as salience, meaningfulness, and difference. But actually, when you unpick that model and understand what can help me drive volume as a brand, or what can help me drive a price premium and sort of those more quality measures, we see that meaningful difference skews towards pricing power. And of course, that's quite an important lever for marketers and businesses to be able to understand and pull. So this really helped us understand that those digital campaigns had such an important role to play in Holland and Barrett's sort of commercial positioning as a brand as well in market, and seeing those lift was a really positive impact for the campaign. Perhaps what you've all been waiting for and what I've been building up to is this last little piece of store visits, right? So on the right, what you're seeing is a map of all of the Holland and Barrett retail locations around the UK. And we loaded all of these into the app. Like I said, geolocation is one of those backbones that the app operates on. And then we were able to essentially monitor our panelists' visitation behavior to those stores. And then through significance testing, we were able to attribute that to the campaign exposure. So in the case of this campaign, we saw that 14% significant lift in store visits as a result of campaign exposure, and that's compared to people who have not been exposed. So fantastic kind of insights here on the more active impact of the campaign outside of that brand equity lens as well. And then we were able to break that down even further. We saw that that campaign was really successful in reaching those 45+ females. And we can see that skew in store visits also correlating with that among that group as well. So these insights serve as a really powerful kind of basis to then draw wider conclusions as well about not only the validity of different channels in the plan, as you're seeing here, those store visits, again, predominantly motivated by that digital plan, and it makes sense. Digital is a more personalized experience. It drives a little bit of differentiation for the brand, and it's really that last kind of encouraging factor to drive people to stores. But it also helps, what I'd love to hear from Philip about in a second, draw more solid lines between measurement and insights like this and sales and that kind of footfall data that brands might have access to as well. So it's bringing the insights effort closer to the kind of reporting and commercial validation effort as well.
I mean, the store visits, as you quite rightly said, the bit that everyone's been waiting for. It's been something that people, estimate or model or try and work out, but have never really had accurate data. Are we finally, crossing this Rubicon? We can finally definitively say this person saw this there and then went into the store and bought their nutritional supplements or whatever they would choose.
Pretty much, yeah. This is the power of relying on the methods that we've talked about here. Everything, as I said, is statistically tested as well. So there's a very small degree of doubt in any of these results, and that degree of doubt is accepted across the industry, as any other factor could be there. But yeah, because we have that proximal targeting capability of understanding how far away someone is and actually entry points into stores as well, can serve as a really effective tool for that. And by the way, it's not solely relegated to the bricks and mortar businesses. Large experiences, first time you can measure, something like a Glastonbury or a big event in the centre of London, that can be measured through proximity targeting like this. Outdoor, I've mentioned a few times, but everything from, the Waterloo IMAX, being 100, 200 meters away from it, crossing Waterloo Bridge and seeing it, right down to walking past a bus stop 6 sheet every day on your walk to the shops or whatever it is. All of these new areas of the plan, these kind of unreachable areas of brand penetration, are now kind of unpicked.
Reaching the unreachable, I love it. So Philip, you're at the coalface of this. This has got to be meaningful for you. We need to take this out of theory and move it into the business context. How has this helped you at Holland and Barrett?
Yeah, I think it's multiple ways, right? So some of those may be more traditional, and some of them are kind of very new, and also some are evolving, right? So I think the exciting part of this is the fact of where will this go, right? And where can we go with this type of passive panel measurement, and how can we get more refined and better over time? I think really for us it delivered beyond expectations, right? So it gave us far more actionable findings than we'd anticipated, both being able to passively measure the brand impact and the equity side, as well as that immediate consumer behavior, and not waiting on long-term modeling kind of programs to understand that longer-term impact. So capturing that emotions and that attitude, we were able to understand what the different elements of exposure drove that behavior more, and start to understand why. And then that helps us optimize as we move forward and plan for our campaigns. I think there's also an element where it gives us, unlike other models and other things that we've tried in the past, it gives us an in-depth demographic together with that channel. So we're really able to understand, which specific channels, and also, the assets within that, the exposure within that, because we're looking at that passive. So there's a large passive data set behind here that we're able to really then figure out, okay, what's driving that behavior change, like which elements of the campaign or which messaging we're working. So we get into like what has been pretty much reserved for a very digital environment in the past. We're now looking at it from an omni-channel campaign, and also a physical retail approach, which we haven't been able to do in the past. So I think those were some of the big takeaways that we had. So it really gave us that single source view. And I think the last point is that really it was also an efficient and cost-effective approach for us, which matters, right? When we're trying to measure more and trying to understand more, being efficient in terms of setup and resource, kind of being able to work through with the team to say, this is where our stores are, these are our assets, our campaigns. A lot of that is just kind of rolling out automatically. Well, it depends on what gets hit with the panel. So there's a really kind of efficient process standpoint to that, and then also a cost-effective and time dimension as well. So the process was faster and more cost-effective, and the insights were better. I think the thing that I just tie back on this, the store visits piece for us, of course, we have footfall data, we have customer data. We're able to kind of monitor that very discrete, very granular level. And so we were able to very quickly build models to help us understand the impact of that campaign, and for the first time have a real view of what that immediate impact is of the campaign.
Fantastic. Yeah, so particularly the cost-effective piece. I mean, you could measure absolutely everything if you really wanted to, with unlimited money and very deep pockets, but I can't see anyone with very deep pockets currently, so we need to be as cost-effective as possible. Philip, I just want to go further now and see what you see next on the Insights horizon. We've got store visits in the bag now, to continue our shopping analogy, Sparsh. What's the sort of solution going to evolve towards? What are the business questions of the future? It's relentless. We've answered this question. What's next on the to-do list? And what sort of things in the future might that such a measurement help answer?
Yeah, I think that we actually have a pretty good roadmap from the way the digital world has evolved in the last 10 years, right? To understand how more of a holistic view like this can evolve. I think real-time media optimization, how does this capability evolve towards that to make faster decisions as the technology evolves? We now optimize our campaigns, and there's a balance there, right? Because campaigns need to breathe and have impact and change perceptions. But for longer campaigns and larger campaigns, the ability to then optimize against the same assets and learn to see how can we improve is really a critical thing that I think is going, this is where this is taking us from an omni-channel standpoint. The other side, which I think is inevitable, is really around integrated media planning and buying, right? So how does measurement become more embedded into the planning and the buying process? You know, we've seen that like we had really good auditing of where our campaign landed, which helped us understand the time of day, when people were seeing it, so much quicker access to that data than traditional auditing processes. So we're able to really then work with our agencies to be able to optimize it, think about how do we even get more efficient and effective. So I think that's something that's going to come quite quickly. And then again, you know, I touched a little bit about it, but understanding and combining physical and digital behaviors, right? So one of the things that I think this will start to do is, okay, how do we take passive measurement and how do we start to, you know, think about digital behaviors, searching, online visits together with in-store, and how that journey really comes together and how campaigns can influence that and understand that and help build that across all of a brand's touch points. It's a bit of a holy grail, I think, but I think that's what this is starting to show us, that we can really get after and understand. And I think lastly, for me, it's really around that privacy first approach, right? The world's always evolving, it's getting more complex. You know, being able to maintain privacy and build that trust with customers, having opt-in, having this way to get a really good granular level of understanding and trust enables us to start to think about, well, how can we look at, you know, lookalike profiling, DMPs, and first-party audience management together with campaigns without necessarily having to monitor everybody and kind of really push the boundaries of privacy. So it gives us an alternative pathway forward, which we know is what consumers want, and that's what customers want in the world as it evolves.
Fantastic. And finally, Sparsh, from a measurement perspective, what impact do you hope to see this sort of capability having on the market?
I think first and foremost, what this has done is a step forward in lowering the bar or threshold for campaign measurement generally. Full cross-media measurement takes time, as has been referenced a few times, might cost an arm and a leg and that kind of thing. But actually this comes at a cost-effective kind of position, and it helps to kind of shed light on that long tail of fragmented touch points that we talked about earlier, right? That previously might have been too low reaching or too low spending to justify any kind of measurement. So we hope to see this spread out across more types of campaigns, more specialist campaigns, and that kind of thing. Also, kind of building of what Philip said about that real-time optimization. This is the closest we can get, and this will develop further to making that a reality through things like live dashboards, through things like more incremental campaign reporting rather than all done at PCA time. All of these things become possible with this type of measurement because, again, there's little modeling involved here. So as soon as we've recorded passively the consumer behavior, we can drive that to insight as soon as we reach a robust sample. So that also becomes made possible. And lastly, I think what we hope to see is this promotes a measurement first attitude in the industry as well. So designing campaigns with measurement baked in, you do that by aligning with a solution that can be as agile and fast moving as campaigns sometimes are as well. We all know there are some times when something goes wrong in the campaign and assets need to be changed, or a national event happens, which means that campaigns need to adapt accordingly. In that same way, the solution is also flexible and adaptable. And then lastly, there are initiatives around the industry, for example, something like Project Origin, which are also kind of flirting with similar ideas that we're doing here. We like to think of this as kind of a proto or an initial stab at Project Origin that's ready to go, good to use as we speak. As that develops in the industry as well, this will naturally kind of grow and adapt alongside those initiatives as well. A lot of the technology underpinning this also underpins that effort as well. So we think this is built to last. We think this will continue to kind of become more and more what measurement looks like as the world becomes naturally more addressable as technology, even in the more linear channels, will inevitably be at the forefront of how those channels are planned, how those channels are reported out against, and that kind of thing. So yeah, from our perspective, we'd really urge advertisers to think measurement first and plan campaigns in a way that you can then uncover ROI that's not only hard cash, essentially. There's also intangible areas of ROI that we can help uncover with something like this.
Fantastic. That has been so informative, and there's a heap of data in there. Just to remind everyone, you can relook at this webinar. Those of you who are currently live, it'll be available on demand in 24 hours. I've got a couple of questions to get through just before the end of the piece. One interesting one: how do you make sure you don't capture outlier behavior? So I take that to mean, you know, suddenly there's a trend, a flash in the pan, or that someone's been influenced, you know, suddenly something turns up on TikTok and everyone's suddenly got to go and get, I don't know, particular as a black cohosh or something. And suddenly there's a rush, and it didn't come from your campaign, and you're not entirely sure where it came from, but suddenly there's a spike. And also, Philip, you mentioned, you know, there's modeling and using this data to inform things in the future. How do you sift through that and go, okay, this is standard consumer behavior, and this is something that was interesting, but we should ignore for the perspective of planning?
So from our perspective, there's a couple of ways. Firstly, you know, there is a bit of a cliche, but you know, all publicity is good publicity. There is something in quantifying a trend, PR, these kind of things that could be positive or negative, and it happens in every brand's life cycle and on an annual basis as well. But there are ways for us to listen out for those things as well. So mid-campaign, if an unexpected trend or something arises, we can do things like add questions in to our surveying. We can listen out for different stimuli that are not originally part of the campaign plan. But equally, because this is a sort of underpinned by statistical significance testing, we can then strip away things that we don't want to look at as well, or at least compartmentalize them, so that then we're just focusing on paid investment, and then incrementally on top of that, wider influences like earned, owned, experience, those kind of things.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think from our perspective, it depends, right? We're a broad retailer that has a very broad base of customers and consumers and lots of different categories and products. So it really depends on the campaign, right? So we measure a lot of our internal data and also other things around social and things that happen with the campaign. So we have to bring that data together to understand that and to gain confidence, which we did. I think what was really encouraging is, you know, if we think about bullseye targeting versus broader, we often have to think about that depending on what the campaign is. And then we also set up our internal measurement to be able to do the same thing. So are we seeing the kind of that similar uplift of customers in certain parts or certain products or certain health needs, missions that people have, or among certain groups of people that we targeted. So we're able to kind of cross-reference those pieces as well to see what that difference is. And I think also, you know, there's things when you start to think about geo from a retail standpoint, you also have holdbacks, right? So certain channels are able to really hold back and start to kind of get more into A/B testing or withholding to be able to understand that. And so again, some of those, you have to plan that depending on what the campaign is and what you're trying to achieve. Some things may not, you know, be harder to sift through, but I think in most cases, you can find some way to be able to, you know, increase your confidence through setting up measurement in advance in building your plans and execution in order to measure. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, measurement first, I think, is the message there. Measurement first, build, and then iterate, model, and we will get ourselves closer than ever to the customer without pestering them in a privacy-first world. Oh, it's a mouthful, isn't it? Hopefully, just let's make customers happy. That's our mission for today, guys. Let's make customers happy. Time has flown, and I'm sure you'll agree there has been lots to learn already. Once more, download the webinar again, go through the finer points, look at those great presentation slides that Barrett shared, so you can feel those figures and how the interaction with social media versus in-store versus campaigns. My mind is boggled. I'm sure something was correct in there. I just want to thank our panelists, Sparsh and Philip. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I want to thank you, the viewers, for joining us too. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Maura. Thanks, Sparsh.
Thank you.